Hey, hi! Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Natalie Youngline, a writer, producer, and director who's worked on everything from You Gotta Eat Here and Till Death Do Us Part to CBC's Coroner and the new Family Channel series Ruby and the Well. She also founded BIPOC TV and Film to help Canadian artists who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color find representation and connection within the industry. And along with Simu Liu, she's the creator, co-writer, and executive producer of Hello Again, a romantic dramedy starring Alex Malari Jr. as Jaden, a Toronto cook who gets a second chance to mend a broken relationship after an encounter with a mysterious little girl. The entire series drops on CBC Gem in Canada today, and it's sweet and it's fun, and you should check it out. Natalie picked Turning Red, which happens to be another story of a Toronto resident whose life is turned inside out by supernatural means. In this case, it's the story of Mylin Lee, a 13-year-old girl who wakes up one day to find she turns into a giant red panda whenever she gets too emotional. The first feature from Oscar-winning Pixar animator Domee Shi, it's a delightful allegory for, well, pretty much everything teenagers go through, powered by lively voice performances from Rosalie Chang, Wei Ching Ho, James Hong, and the incredible Sandra Oh. And it just so happens to take place a few blocks from the building where I recorded the first year of this podcast. This is Someone Else's Movie.
You know, when the trailer first dropped, I was like, oh, that's really cool. And when I saw it, I was just so overwhelmed, like I think I cried a couple of times, and just the relationship with the mom is the thing that like really got me, and just like how her whole world fell apart and then came together was just so unfortunately relatable. And it's just such a fun and joyous movie, really.
It surprised me too. I had seen Bao and interviewed Domee Shi when she was here promoting that. We actually had the interviews. Disney set her up in Rolsan on Spadina, like literally across the road from where Bao shot, quote unquote, right, took place, and where Turning Red takes place. And the photorealistic-ish Toronto was a great hook there. And hearing about it in Turning Red, it's like, well, of course, there's going to be details. What I didn't realize was she basically made a companion piece to Scott Pilgrim, right? Not just in terms of the use of the city, but in terms of the attitude and the slightly fantastical world of Toronto because Scott Pilgrim is set in 2003. And this feels like May is going to grow up and she's going to the same school as Knives Chow. Like, it just feels like there's the same world there somehow, even though this is...
Oh, that's so great. I didn't even clue into that.
No one has brought it up at all in the interviews, which I guess is good, right? Because it means that the film can stand on its own. And it should, because it's delightful. And the other thing that I was not expecting was that it would just keep getting complicated, because so many animated narrative, or so many family films start with a premise and then just maintain it. And every 20 minutes, there's a new complication that actively changes the trajectory of the story and makes it different and more alive and more engaging. Like, it's not just about the Tiger Mom stereotype. It's not just about learning to be yourself. It's not just about the boy band thing. The moment that her friends find out, it's not a Teen Wolf movie anymore. It's not a secret thing, right? Like, it's just, and at every turn, I was just so happy that at no point is a red panda, giant or otherwise, perceived as frightening to the other kids. Every single person loves it. And that is so different from every other puberty metaphor in any movie, right? Where there's some part of it that's horrifying or shameful. It's only ever May's own problem that she has to get past. Everybody else is on board.
I think that was like one of the many nice surprises, is like how the friends embraced her and how people who she thought were not friends, like, embraced her and thought she was like adorable and cute and everything. And for me, the panda thing was a little metaphor for, getting your period, but really it was about like the part of inside of you that you don't like and you don't accept and you're scared of. And the fact that all these other people can like sometimes accept you and love you before you can even love yourself. Like, that is huge.
Yeah. and not a message I'm used to seeing in
Yeah.
family entertainment. Even just the idea of acceptance it's always the thing that happens at the end of the movie, right? It doesn't happen 20 minutes in. And
Yes. Yes.
the only awkwardness is, well, I mean, it's generational, right? I mean, there's that other problem where her family can't handle it, even though they've all gone through it. They want to spare her. And that, again, that felt like a puberty metaphor too. Like if you could spare your child the pain of going through adolescence, I mean, of course you would, right? That's something you would want, but everybody forgets as soon as they're clear of it, because I think we try so hard to repress just how horrible that time is. And it's not just the physical stuff, right? Like it's the awkwardness of figuring out who you are, and the excess that kids can bring to things that they love. That's why the boy band thing is so perfect. We all understand what it's like to get that hyped up for a thing. You totally know the impulse, and it's the thing. I think that's the first thing you learn to hide about your personality is how much you love stuff when you're a kid, because that's not cool, right? Like commitment isn't cool.
I know. I remember, like, I used to love Boy George, and I would cut out all of his photos and like arrange it, like paste it on my wall and then arrange it. And then my sister loved Michael Jackson, and like I was not part of the in crowd, but the way that I could become part of it was to like go into her room and steal a Michael Jackson photo off her wall and then like sell it to a friend, one of her friends, so that they would start talking to me. Oh. So many memories.
Well, and I think you being a Boy George fan means in the end you won. But yeah, that was before social media, before the internet. Yeah. Turning Red is, like, it's very cleverly just at the edge of all of that stuff, where the internet's around, but it's not enough to completely derail the story. And you can still kind of relate to people being in their own silos, people being isolated, kids figuring out what it is they like without any outside help. Like Maylin drawing her own fantasies out is, again, it's an intensely private thing that before the internet existed, you couldn't share this stuff. There was no way to find other people who did the same thing. There was just no sense that the world would accept whatever it was that you're doing. Not that it's, we're not talking Rule 34 porn of anything, but it's just so strange to think of a time when private thoughts were genuinely private. And that makes it more terrifying, right? Because these kids haven't grown up in front of cameras and social media the way that the current generation has. They're genuinely mortified when something that they're passionate about is exposed to the world, especially if their mom fucks it.
Yeah. I think that was like a really brilliant decision that they made to place it in that time period, especially because like you just feel so much more isolated in that way. I think one of the good things about social media is that you can always find, very specifically someone or a group of people who understand what you're going through or have been there. You can corral that kind of army behind you, for lack of a better word. And yeah, I think just like that feeling of like no one will understand me is so universal.
Yeah, no one will understand me, and I'm a smelly red monster, I think is the line that she has, which is the closest they get to real body shaming. But I get it, because that's how I'm trying to walk a really fine line here, because that's how advertising conditions people to see themselves, right? Like here are all these products to make things better. And when May's mom comes in, she's got everything. She's ready. She's got ibuprofen and pads, and that's wonderful, because I don't think I've ever seen that even in a modern sitcom, where that level of frankness and honesty is prepared, even though she's wrong, and that's not what the problem is. And again, the next swerve the film sets up is that this is not a surprise to the family. They knew it was coming. They just didn't tell her because, again, continuing the metaphor, they wanted to spare her. They thought they'd have more time. And it speaks volumes about how how Ming infantilizes May and refuses to see her as her own person, but also ignores this massive, giant, scary, potentially scary problem, especially once we find out the scale of her own. That's the one thing. I'm jumping all over the place. It's the one shot I would have cut. Like the first shot, yeah, that shot of her approaching on the Sky Dome.
Right.
Because I don't think we should know how big right up until she actually crashes into it's just this one thing where once you see it, you're just like, oh, well, that's a Cloverfield. That's an issue. It's an order of magnitude. But if really that is the one shot that I would quibble with in the entire film, I think that's otherwise a pretty much perfect movie. And it's because it operates on all of those levels. It's got all of these pieces moving in sequence, but also in sync with each other. And I have to admit, I haven't really enjoyed a Pixar movie this much in a long time. It feels like they've been kind of running in circles, and Soul, not really. I flat out did not enjoy Luca. And suddenly, this is what creativity looks like. This is what one person's voice can do.
Right. Yeah.
With this canvas, with these tools. It's great. It just makes the whole format feel like it's come back to life.
I mean, I think I'm just so fascinated by like visually how, I don't even know how they did it. But like it's just so rich visually, and like cooking scene with the slow motion of like the lettuce being chopped up, and then like you see how the dad sees himself in his glasses, and then it just suddenly fades away. It's like, it's so visually beautiful. And then story wise, like it just works on so many different levels. It's really deep, like it's an immigrant story. It's a story about like intergenerational trauma, and it's a story about intergenerational relationships, and also the patterns that you repeat, with your own child, and friendship and loyalty and all of that. And I think that's what makes it feel so different and fresh, and all the turns that you were talking about, like just make it deeper and deeper. And the moment that the grandma calls,
yes.
And suddenly like mom is hiding under the couch as well. It's like, oh shit, like that's why you're so hard on May, because you are her.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing that that cliche still plays, because it is like it's absolutely rooted in every mother-daughter story is, with the exception of Gilmore Girls, where I guess, like the whole point of that show is that she doesn't want to raise her daughter the way she was raised. And that creates its own problems. And what a weird link that I would make to jump there. But I just saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, which also comes back to this idea of, in this case, a Chinese family that came to America a generation previously, and is ultimately about parents trying to give their daughter a better life without ever understanding that all the daughter wants is to be with them. And this is a different conflict, but the generational thing and the way that it lines up. And that, again, the curse of the panda isn't part of it, which I think is absolutely wonderful, that the curse is just something that they deal with. There's a ritual. It's fine. You never have to deal with it again. And you don't think about it as extraordinary because it's always been part of your family. And I know a couple of critics who I respect very much have taken issue with the mysticism of it as part of the exoticization of the Asian characters, but using elements that are recognizable and familiar and just saying, oh no, they're real in this world. That kind of made sense to me. Admittedly, I'm not myself steeped in that culture from birth. And if I was seeing it reflected back at me in that way, and if it was something personal, like I'm watching, oh shit, it's embargoed, I can't talk about it yet. But it is about Eastern European Jews. And that's something that my family comes from and still sort of clings to in a lot of different ways. And I didn't feel uncomfortable with it, but there were moments where I thought, oh, that's a bit much. But it's only because I know it inside and out. I think someone
Mm-hmm.
coming to it from the outside would just see it as detail, as color, and not think of it any further.
I mean, I think the cultural thing is interesting because my family is Trinidadian Chinese. So a lot of the cultural things or traditions that are, Chinese are filtered through this lens of like the Trinidadian take on it. So
Sure.
for me, like watching it, like I don't have I feel like I'm one step removed from I don't know. I don't know what is the authentic Chinese experience. Who knows? It's everything, right? It's part of the diaspora and how we then reinterpret the culture. And so like watching the film just felt like that was like another step, right? Like they're part of the tradition is this curse that for many years the family thought of as a curse, but it's actually, you know, for this generation, it's a blessing. And so what do we do when we have parts of culture that like we want to forget or erase or not be a part of, and how to embrace it in a totally different way. And I think that's why like when when the mom is passed out in the Sky Dome as the massive panda, and then all the aunties like become pandas, and they're all like pulling on her, and then the amalgamation of like the two different styles of music blending together, that was like so perfect for me, and that was another point where I cried. But just like that kind of like you can marry these two parts of you and make it into this one thing.
Yeah. And the songs are kind of ingenious that way, because like they are just empty boy band bubblegum pop, but written with just enough intelligence to know that it's, you're hearing a kind of very, very clever or loving homage rather than a full-on parody. And the way the chant weaves in with it, as soon as I realized that was happening, it's just like, oh, that's perfect. I love a good mashup, but it's just it's the synthesis. It's the moment where it all comes together for everyone. And yeah, I don't know how you watch this movie and feel left out. Like it just, that ridiculous complaint about it being impenetrable to someone who isn't interested in the story or already or themselves of the diaspora. It's just like, come on, movies are about empathy, and this is also, I can't imagine anyone would be able to empathize with someone turning into a giant red panda, because that's literally never happened. You can make the leap for that.
People turning into cars, right, and robots. So
yeah, I mean, we've all done that. That's when you're 17 and you become a Camaro for a week, that's just like a natural rite of passage. Maybe you have to be part American, but it's ludicrous to pick on that as the thing as the barrier to entry, right? Because yeah, it's a coming of age picture, it's a parent-child picture, it's a high school movie, kind of. It's all just so utterly relatable. And I'm not just saying this because my old building is in the backdrop of several shots. But it is just the most gratifyingly, unabashedly Canadian thing in years and years and years. And in no way is it offering any of that stuff as weakness, right? Like it's not laugh at the weird money. It's just, we have blue fives and coins, deal with it. Like it's part of this world. Again, like people watch movies where elves and orcs trade gold and they're fine with that. This is not a problem. And bags of milk. There are bags of milk. I just saw them in something else too. And I was just stunned that I think maybe it was an episode of Transplant where that thing airs on NBC. There's bags of milk on a kitchen table and nobody says anything about it. It's just there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love that it's just in Toronto, right? We're not trying to erase it the way that so many movies, since we do so much service production here, movies and TV shows try to erase it for something else. And I think just that sense of pride of being able to identify, parts of Toronto that we can remember, pre-massive condos,
Yeah, absolutely.
and all like the small mom and pop shops and stuff, and even the streetcar. Um, that's like, all of that is just so fun. But if you're not from Toronto, it doesn't matter. It's just it's a story that's placed in a particular place, right? Like if that was in any other city that I've never been in, I would just accept it. And I think like we as Canadians have this hang up on like,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
feeling like less than. We always have to like prove ourselves or whatever. And this is just so great that it's just going to be shown everywhere, and we're going to see the amazing Toronto that was.
Yeah. And I just love the idea that there are going to be kids who grow up on this and then come here and miss it all. Like it just, oh, I remember a different streetcar. I thought this would be different. And it's great because even though this thing takes place 21 years ago, it's still like a bygone era. It's a lot further back in a lot of other ways. We just, those are the Miller years. I was trying to do the math and figure out if is Chrétien still prime minister in this world? Has that not happened yet? When did Harper get elected? This is the last bastion of our optimism as a nation.
When you said 21 years, I was trying to do the math. Like,
I know, it's freaky.
But it is.
It's so much further back than you think it is.
Wow.
People born before this are old enough to drink in the States now. That doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't. But it speaks to it's a different Toronto. It's a sweeter, more innocent Toronto. But all the ideals are still there. Like there's a diversity in May's school, her friend group, who are all kind of instantly recognizable types, are also different ethnicities that are not quite as instantly recognizable. I love the little subtle hint, which is, I think, never expressed at all, but it's just there, that Miriam is kind of crushing on May here and there. There are moments where that character is drawn to look at her in a loving fashion. Never comes up, never gets stated. And Miriam knows that May is into boys, and so it just never comes up, but it's there. And I think that's just sort of beautiful in that weird, subtle, oddball kind of way, that there are people whose stories aren't being told in this movie can still see themselves.
Yeah. Miriam is totally gay. I mean, yeah, and I mean, I love like the setting of Toronto and the diversity that we could see on the screen, and I mean, I thought it was interesting that she didn't have a friend that was Black, and I feel like I was thinking about that a lot, and like thinking about the pockets of Toronto that Toronto is, because you can be in a pocket of Toronto where it's very not diverse.
Oh yeah.
Or like you can be in a pocket of Toronto where it's predominantly Asian, or you can be in a pocket where it's predominantly Indian, and like so. I don't know, not that I'm justifying it, but it was just like, oh, that's really interesting that she didn't have a friend that was Black.
It's been a couple of weeks since I've seen it, but I don't remember any prominent Black characters.
Four Town had one. He was, I can't remember his name. There was like one Black singer in the band.
Yeah, Robert, Jesse, Aaron Z, Aaron T, and Ty.
Right. And then I think Tyler is Blasian.
So maybe it is just a demographic thing. And then the school is in Chinatown. So
yeah,
maybe that explains part of it. Someone on Twitter was asking where the temple was, because obviously it's real. There is a Buddhist temple on Bathurst Street, but this May's parents' place would be due south of the Chinatown Center, as far as I could tell. Because you can't help it. You're just sort of figuring out the geography of it while you're watching. It's like, well, the Baldwin building of Kensington Market Lofts is visible in a bunch of shots, and I used to live there, so I know straight down would be Chinatown Center. So it's maybe the Atkinson development that got raised and is now
funny.
condos.
I was thinking about the Bathurst Temple as well.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, well, Chinatown isn't quite laid out the way Chinatown is and Spadina is a little bit narrower.
Yeah, the curve in the streetcar isn't real. That's more like that's like a Parliament thing. But I love that her patchwork vision of Toronto allows you to locate everything, even if it's not really there. It's like, well, this would be that, and that would be here. And she got the fonts on the computer store right.
I know.
Which I think is so great. It just feels like something that's been baked with love.
Yes, totally.
When she made Bao, she said that they went to every Chinese restaurant in Oakland and San Francisco. They went through dumpling after dumpling after dumpling. They talked to food photographers to get the looks of everything right. And it feels like this is some sort of sketchbook memory, right? Like it's just a little pastel. It's a little less photorealistic, but it's warm and loving. It's like, it almost plays like a memory in that way, that this did happen 20 years ago. And this is just May remembering it as she gets ready to tell it to her kid. Maybe, I don't know. I love the idea of things coming full circle, but I also just love the idea that there's a werepanda running around out there somewhere in Toronto.
And then you see the after effects of like Sky Dome being destroyed.
Yeah. Oh, it's just so great. I honestly think we should just start telling people that really happened.
Right. And then it got rebuilt.
Yeah, that's why they call it Rogers Center. They had to build a new sign. The Rogers paid for it. They redeveloped it.
I mean, I refused to call it the Rogers Center for like a number of years when it got rebranded.
Yeah, I still call it the Dome. I think just it's easier for people. They understand it.
Yeah.
If they're not from here. I suppose this is how New Yorkers behave. Like people who were there in the 80s and remember the Lower East Side as this bombed out warehouse and loft thing where punk came from. And with us, it's just like, well, you weren't here before the condos. You don't know. You could see the lake. You kids today, you have no idea.
I mean, it's just changing so fast. Even, since the pandemic and all the restaurants that have shut down and now bought out, like you can walk down Dundas 2 weeks later, it's like it's changed. And I just hope that there's someone walking around Toronto taking photos before all these buildings get torn down, because it's like it's so fuzzy in my memory now. Okay, the one thing I wish was in the movie, Honest Ed's. That's
true. They never get there. They never get that far north. May and her friends have all the shops in Chinatown and Kensington. They wouldn't need to go to Honest Ed's, but yeah, you're right. It's so prominent in Scott Pilgrim. That intersection, like the record store they shop in, Lee's Palace. Lee's is the only thing left.
Oh my God.
I know. It's a nostalgia machine on an extra level for people who grew up in Toronto, because that's the city, right? Like that's the end of the weird, funky city that was, and now everything is just sort of steel and glass and anonymous towers. We're Manhattanizing the downtown, and I don't think it's for the better. I mean, not even Manhattan has this many weed dispensaries.
Right. Oh my God, that is the most annoying thing.
Every single coffee shop is now a weed dispensary.
Yeah.
Yeah. The coffee shop
and they're all selling the same thing because they can't sell anything different.
Yeah. This can't last. I mean, okay, for the pandemic, it helps us get through, I suppose, but then eventually it's going to have to reinvent itself. I just don't know what the next thing is going to be. Like artisanal candy stores, something. There's got to be, it won't be more coffee shops. It's got to have to be something else.
I don't know, but you got to get ahead of that curve.
Yeah, it'll be Disney stores. They'll all be selling red pandas, which again, I kind of love and would like one. I don't think we've discussed the character design at all yet. And it is just this perfect balance of big, cute, fluffy, and also slightly scary. Like the proportions aren't right. You can tell how she's struggling to move in the first scenes, or she's not in control of her body, which again, perfect puberty metaphor, but causing damage, like ruining stuff, smashing things, which again is how you feel when you're that age, even if it's not actually happening.
Yeah. I mean, I remember just the rage that would like just suddenly come on for no reason at all. But I think if they make like an actual merch stuffed panda, like you should be able to remove the ears and the tail so that like as you're calming it down and brushing its cheeks, you can like
Oh wow. That's a great idea for a toy. A panda that you can calm down.
yeah.
Oh. It's not your panda, it's the panda. It's the avatar of rage. And the thing that people don't talk about when they get older because it's shameful. Like you don't like who you are when you're in that stage. A dear friend of mine once pointed out very, very, very smartly that the people who peak in high school and love themselves then are not people you ever want to know when you're an adult because they have not experienced uncomfortableness and discomfort and the idea of not fitting in any way. And so they just don't learn to make accommodations of people.
Yeah.
And you see that constantly in Turning Red. You see people May feel like it's okay, making her know that she's not a monster, telling her it's not her fault. Even Ming tries. Her mom, Sandra Oh, again, perfect casting for that role because you need someone who can be hard, but always make us understand where she's coming from. Like we understand why Ming is the way she is. She's trying to protect her daughter at every turn. She just doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, as a mother, I found that like so relatable and like trying to keep your own anger in and then like suddenly feeling like you're exploding because you're so like protective of your child. It was interesting because I the second time I saw it was with my family. So we were like my mom, my dad,
Oh, wow.
and my daughter. It was like an intergenerational watch. And everyone was like laughing and loved it. And when Sandra Oh's character turned into this big monster, like my daughter burst out laughing, and I could feel she didn't have to say anything. I could feel she was like, "That's my mom." She's angry.
Oh no! Is that how you want to be seen by a Disney movie?
It's a big, humongous panda.
I mean, powerful and not to be screwed with. I get that,
right?
And and just the way that it sort of sets that up with the big scar on Ming's mother's face. That now, of course, if the panda was always that big, that's like she was holding back. That speaks to her own restraint and her ability to control her rage, because something that big would just pick you up and throw you across town.
Yes.
So it's a character moment that's just tucked away. It's disguised in the detail in a way that I did not see coming. And it's so smart. And it's so weirdly respectful of every character, right? Like Ming's not a cartoon mom. She's exaggerated, but she's not a parody. And her panda has to be taken seriously as well. So there must be intention and agency, in all of it. It's just, it's great. It's all I want from my movies.
I know, it just storytelling wise, it was really, really satisfying.
I'm trying to figure out how to loop this back to Hello Again, which does deal with parents and children, but not quite in the same way. I wanted to ask about the genesis of that project, and it's a love story that plays out or plays with a few extra genre conventions, but it's rooted in very understandable human anxieties. I think that's a fair way to set it up without spoiling anything.
Right.
and so how did that come about? I mean, I talked to Simu about it in 2019 when we did the Now Rising Stars profile. He was saying that you had just finished it or pitched it. I think at the time they pitched it as a feature to CBC, and then they said, what about a digital series?
Yeah, he had pitched it to CBC on his own. And when they put it into development, they had said, that he should team up with a more experienced writer. And we had known each other from the Real Asian Film Festival. I had been his screenwriting mentor through their Unsung Voices program. And so we had remained in contact. So he brought me onto the project. And initially, it really was like this love story between Jade and Avery. And then as we continued talking about like just the idea of love and culturally, like how we expressed love and how love was expressed to us, just talking about the family circumstance really came out, that just became really important to address that. Just the idea that like the character, Jaden's character, is really rooted in his family, and some of his actions or how he reacts to things is really rooted in how he grew up. And so we get to see a little slice of like his family, his mom, his dad. And it was really fun too, because when we cast Alex, Alex's Malari Jr. is Filipino, and the character, so we didn't want to then erase the fact that he's Filipino in this Chinese character. So then we had the dad be Chinese and the mom be Filipina. And so it was a really cool way just to like integrate these different cultures very specifically into his life. And it was fun. I mean, when we went into post, we had this amazing composer, Kirsty Rand, who's Filipino, and he did this amazing job with the music on the series. And when I was listening to the music on Turning Red, I was like, oh, Kirsty could have composed this. I was like, it's his style. Yeah.
Yeah, it's informed by, but not slavishly devoted to a specific type of orchestration. Even it's not even composition; it's just the way that it's played that makes it distinct. I think in both cases, because Turning Red flirts with, I mean, I don't even know. It's hybridized in a way, I suppose, because it is still a Pixar score. You can listen to it and recognize the energy, mm-hmm. the action beats, but also the flavor is completely different running through all of it. And then, yeah, Hello Again, similarly, like it's a romantic comedy, but it's scored with instruments that aren't necessarily the first ones you'd think of, but they work for the characters. They represent other, like not otherness, but other values that are going on in the background of the show.
Yeah, we really wanted to make sure that like there was a little bit of culture represented in the music, but not so much that it then like feels like really weird and other, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the fact that it's in Toronto, and Toronto is really, you get influenced by all the different cultures around you. That could also be reflected in the music as well.
Yeah, and it felt kind of almost like a statement that the first hint of something otherworldly is portrayed on the show through boba tea. That felt like, I don't know why exactly, but that felt like something that Simu had in his head the whole time. He's very boba forward on social media. Yeah.
And that was also, I mean, we had a mini writing room after we went through development. And so Leonard Chan and Leif Ramsaran, and we really talked about like, what is that supernatural element that we're going to push into episode 1 without giving away the whole thing. And that's one of the joys of being in a writing room, is that if you don't have an idea, someone else will, and if no one else does, like all your bad ideas will eventually lead to a good idea.
I have heard this. Yeah.
So yeah, the bubble tea thing was definitely like Leif and Leonard's bouncing around ideas.
But it's organic. Like it feels like, again, it's just in the moment. It doesn't feel like it's been stapled in. It just happens to be that. And it's a great visual image, right? So why wouldn't you? It felt like a signature to me just because of the constant, I guess it's just his Twitter account, but he celebrates a lot of things with boba tea. But it also like, it's like, oh yeah, this is again, this is the work of somebody who isn't just referencing things. These are the things that would be to hand. Like this is the world that, just again, with the chef stuff that goes on throughout, the fact that people are carrying chickens around, like it's not a gag, it's for work. There's a reason for it, but it's also funny.
Yeah.
Because chickens are inherently funny.
I know. I think that's the thing, is that like, we felt like it should feel like how we live, right? Like, yes, we are Asian. Yes, we are, And yes, sometimes that comes up in your face in different ways, but you're also, I don't know, I don't even know how to describe it. Like you're just living, you just are. And these parts of you come up, but it's not like a big deal until someone else's eyes are on it and make it a big deal.
Right. But by the same token, if you put that in the show, then other people will recognize it and feel seen.
Yeah.
So
yes,
it's more important to have it than to pull it back, right?
Yeah, totally. And even the set design, production design that Liz Bishop did, we talked a lot about the house and how the house should reflect, the family house should reflect them. And part of the conversation was it should be messy. Like a ton of shit on the counters, because that's how our parents live.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we'd love it if Asian parents were very tidy and didn't hoard things, all of the ketchup packets and stuff like that. But that's just the way it is. So she did like this amazing job, like layering all the stuff into the house that just made it feel like real and like you're just walking into home.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's nothing about that show that doesn't feel lived in. Even the condo, when we see people dividing it up and taking stuff out, it still feels like it's in process of separation. It doesn't feel set. It doesn't feel like a set. It feels like a place that the camera has stumbled into. Turning Red kind of has the same sort of liveliness going on. I mean, I'm just thinking of the contrast between May's room before and after it's cleaned out. But it's a riot of stuff. It's a 13-year-old girl who hasn't figured out all the things she likes, so she's just surrounding herself with things. It's just production elements like that are so important, whether you're working in animation or live action. Yeah. Like it's about who these people are and what the world they've built for themselves is.
Yeah, totally. And I love watching like crafts people on like TV or film, like what they bring to, because you can write something and you can write, oh, it's in a bedroom, but then they're thinking of it in a visual way and like asking questions that you might not even have thought about, and then like bringing all this extra element to it that like really makes your script come alive in a way that you never even imagined it, which is amazing. What I was really appreciating is that like Alex and Rong could be number 1 and number 2 on the call sheet. Like it's very rare as in maybe never to have that, or very rare. Sorry, I'll change that.
No, but I know what you mean.
It's very rare. It's very rare to have like 2 Asian, like number 1 and number 2 in a romantic comedy, right? And to play like the one who is desired is a huge thing. And that was a really big part of the conversation when Seema and I were developing it. Is just like we never saw Asian men represented in like a sexy way, in a desirable way. And they were always like the butt of the jokes, and like all these John Hughes movies, which are great, but at the same time, they're racist.
Oh yeah.
If you like, you have to put that in a box and like ignore that so that you can enjoy the rest of the movie. Or for some of us, we have to. And I think that like has such a huge impact on actors who are Asian, but also just on people who are Asian, and just like not feeling like you're good enough, or that you could be attractive or desirable, or all those things. And I think I'm just really excited that like Alex and Rong were able to play those parts and bring so much depth to the characters.
Yeah, it's a good, sweet love story, really. I mean, at its core, that's the thing that is being chased in the whole narrative, and it's one that's fun to root for too, which is kind of nice. This is going to drop on March 25th, which is the same day that Everything Everywhere All at Once opens in the States.
I know.
And you get to see like Ke Huy Quan, who was Short Round and Data in Temple of Doom and the Goonies. Like, it's a remarkable performance. And he gets to be like in a tuxedo in a Wong Kar-wai kind of pastiche sequence. Uh-huh. And it's just this moment of exactly what you were saying. I have never seen this actor, mostly because he sat out the last 30 years working behind the scenes as a fight choreographer and doing other things. But to see him kind of step out of nowhere and occupy this space as a romantic leading man and all the other stuff he's doing in that film. Have you seen it?
No, I saw the trailer.
It is
wild. It looks amazing.
Yeah, it is so much fun. But it is like we're in this moment where it feels like anything is possible. And maybe the genre aspect is part of it to sort of make it more accessible to funding and to production. Audiences are going to show. Like audiences are there for all of this stuff because people are waiting to see themselves as the heroes of their own stories. But what we're now with Turning Red being a fantasy, and with Hello Again having a kind of a supernatural genre conceit, and with Everything Everywhere being what it is, the doors are wide open. And then the next step, I think, is to just start telling straight comedies and dramas. And I think, again, like I want to see them. Let's do this.
It's so funny. I feel like we are in a time that things are shifting, like in terms of like who we're seeing on screen and stuff like that. And at the same time, there's a lot of unlearning to do, even for me. Like when I heard that we were going to drop the same day as Michelle Yeoh's movie, I was like, we can't, there's only room for one. Like, no one will be able to like understand.
Oh man.
It's not true.
Yeah.
But it's what we've seen up to now. Right. So it was like, I have to also open my own mind, and like, it's okay. There is room for all of us.
But there is room. And the other good thing is that Everything Everywhere doesn't open in Canada until April 1st. So there's a window. You can exploit this window.
Right.
My thanks to Natalie Younglai, whose charming new digital series Hello Again is streaming across Canada right now on CBC Gem. Thanks also to Winnie Wong. She knows what she did. You can find Natalie on Twitter at nyounglai, all one word, NYOUNGLAI, and you can find Turning Red on Disney Plus pretty much everywhere Disney Plus exists. It's a delight. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. And once again, I remind you that the first year of the podcast is available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 46 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. payhip.com/Semcast. Go buy something. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next time.